Today, Nissan pulled the covers off of the all-new 2025 Nissan Kicks. We don't have pricing yet, but you can bet this is still going to be one of the least expensive vehicles you can buy in North America for 2025. And it's going on sale in just a few months. It's actually going to be on sale this year in 2024. Unfortunately, I was not able to see the Kicks in person. Big thank you to Nissan for inviting me. Unfortunately, I had other things going on and I just couldn't make it. And I'm really sad about that because Nissan has been really dedicated to the segment that I care a lot about in North America, which is affordable transportation. Now, I don't know how much the Kicks is going to cost. I have to tell you that right up front. But the current model started just over $21,000, not including destination. I suspect this is going to be more expensive, but hopefully still under $25,000, including destination. We should know pricing details soon because this is going on sale a little bit later this year, in summer of 2024. Now, let's talk about the design. You'll notice it looks boxier and it looks a little bit more upright than before. That's because this is an entirely new Kicks, and it's definitely focused on making the interior more practical, more premium, obviously looking more style forward, as you can see here, and importantly, giving owners the most requested feature for the Kicks, which is all-wheel drive. The lack of all-wheel drive was definitely something that folks complained about with the previous generation Kicks, and they have rectified it with this generation, but there are obviously some things to keep in mind. As a result of the addition of all-wheel drive, the Kicks has become a little bit heavier, and that's why under the hood we find a new engine. It's now a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine producing, according to them, 141 horsepower, 140 pound-feet of torque. That's a pretty decent bump over the outgoing 1.6-liter engine. No turbo going on here under the hood, of course. And yes, it is still using a CVT, just like basically everything else in this segment. Thanks to the addition of all-wheel drive, they obviously realized people might want to take their Kicks a little further off the beaten path, so all models get more ground clearance. It's not an optical illusion. When you take a look at these photos, you'll notice that the Kicks certainly looks more high-rating than before, and a little bit boxier from some angles as well. And that was certainly deliberate to give it that extra off-road capability. They've even actually published some approach and departure angles on the spec sheet, which I find a little surprising. Now for the downside. The front-wheel drive model is a few hundred pounds heavier than the outgoing front-wheel drive model, and all-wheel drive adds nearly 200 pounds. So the all-wheel drive model, even though it gets 20 more horsepower, it's probably going to be slower than the old Kicks because it's going to weigh about 500 pounds more. Going back to the design, you'll notice that they've really tried to disguise some of the boxy proportions in the rear, giving it that sort of swoosh look that we find in other Nissan models. I think it's an attractive design, and of course we're going to get some new wheels as well here rolling through these pictures. And of course there's also going to be an SR trim if you want the more stylish interpretation of the Kicks. Also, a big 2-pane moonroof is going to be found up top. This generation of the Kicks is certainly focusing on some more creature comforts. Not everything is going to be standard, so let's roll through the interior photos because these are, of course, of the most expensive model. The first thing they noticed, or I noticed rather, on these photos is that the Bose personal audio system, which were the headrest surround speakers on the driver's side, you now have passenger side speakers as well. That's part of why we know the price tag is going up. There's simply more going on in this Kicks. I actually thought that the driver's side only speaker was a good compromise because most of the time people are just driving themselves around. So personally, I think I would have preferred to see a few bucks shaved off the price tag and just keeping that driver's side speaker there. The other thing that we see in this interior is that we now get Nissan's zero-gravity seats both front and rear, and new zero-gravity seat designs as well. Nissan already has some of the more comfortable seats in the segment for long road trips, and this is promising improved comfort both in the front and in the back. Now, speaking of the back, this cargo area is absolutely huge. It is 30 cubic feet in the front-wheel drive model, 29.2 if you get the SV and SR trim, because there's a little bit of a change back there in the cargo area. That is an enormous cargo area. It's 5 cubic feet bigger than the outgoing model. It's the same as a Mazda CX-5 and actually more cargo capacity than you'll find in a Toyota Venza. There is one downside though. If you choose all-wheel drive, that cargo capacity goes down to 23.9 cubic feet. And there's a big reason for that. The rear suspension changes. If you're a fan of sharper handling in your small crossover, the front-wheel drive Kicks gets a pretty typical torsion beam rear suspension back there. It's a twist beam axle. It's not the most elegant rear suspension design, but it does allow for a really big cargo area. If you get all-wheel drive It gets a multi-link independent suspension, which of course takes up more room, but they need to package that rear differential back there. The benefit, of course, is improved handling. So if you want sharper handling, better feel, especially on broken pavement, and you want all-wheel drive, then there's that option for you. But if you want the one that's going to be faster 0 to 60 and have a bigger cargo area, you're going to want the front-wheel drive model. Now let's take a look at the inside. The first thing you're going to notice here is that we get some absolutely enormous screens in the dashboard. Now these are not standard. If you get the base model, we get 7-inch LCDs, both for the driver's side instrument cluster and for the infotainment system in the middle. Unfortunately, Nissan didn't give me any photos of that. Instead, they gave us the photos of these 12.3-inch twin screen displays here in the dash. If you're a fan of Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, one big disclaimer here is that you will not find that feature on the 7-inch screen, and I have to admit being kind of disappointed about that. Admittedly, they give us wireless Android Auto and CarPlay on the larger screen, and you'll find that in the SV and SR trims, but you can bet those are going to be more expensive. Currently, the SV trim is about $23,000. I wouldn't be surprised if the SV trim stepped up to about $24,000 for 2025, and including destination, it's probably going to be over that $25,000 mark. So definitely keep that in mind. Of course, we still get Bluetooth audio streaming on the base screen. You just don't get that smartphone integration. You also don't get as many USB ports. You'll get 2 USB-C ports and 2 rear USB-C ports in the top-end trim, just the front 2 USB ports in the SV trim, and then just 1 regular old USB Type A if you get the base S trim. Let me know what you think of the interior design on the new Kicks. I think they did a really good job integrating the screens into the dashboard design. They don't look tacked on, they really look purposeful, and importantly, I don't think they look too big. And that was something that honestly I was worried about when I first heard they were going to put 2 12.3-inch displays in the dash. I thought, gosh, the dashboard is a little small, it's kind of a small car, I think they'd look too big. But they don't for an important reason. The cabin and the car actually got wider and bigger for 2025. So it's a nearly 2-inch bump in terms of the width of the cabin for the front passengers and about 1.5 inch increase for the rear passengers in terms of width. Now, legroom is pretty similar to before. It's really only about 1/10 of an inch improvement. So the 3-inch stretch on the outside mostly goes to the cargo area in the back, where we get those 5 cubic feet of extra storage. If I compare this to the competition, this has a ton of legroom. It's actually about the most in the segment. You will find just a hair more in a Mazda CX-30, but not really an appreciable amount more there. It's significantly more than we find in a Corolla Cross at 74.9 inches there, or a Hyundai Venue at 75.9. And oddly enough, it actually is only about 1 inch less than you'll find in a Toyota RAV4, with a cargo area that's only a hair smaller as well. So if you're looking for something the size of a RAV4, you don't need that level of performance. You want slightly better fuel economy, of course, a much lower starting price. You might want to check out something like a Kicks. You know, the average compact crossover has become larger and significantly more expensive over the last few years. So I'm really excited that Nissan is dedicated to making the Kicks work and to improve it by giving the feature that most shoppers said they really wanted, which was all-wheel drive. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comments section, and of course stay tuned because hopefully I will be driving a Kicks by this summer, and you know, I really actually love affordable cars, so absolutely no kidding, this is actually one of the vehicles I am most excited to drive this year because I really believe that cars have spiraled out of control price-wise, and I really hope that Nissan doesn't just keep the price low. I hope they also build a huge number of Kicks because I think this could be a really popular product if people can find them and if they come in desirable configurations as well. Let me know what you think about that. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Check out our Facebook page where we take a deeper dive into the Kicks and, of course, respond to questions. And I'll see all of you next week.